Doctors and nurses of Reddit, have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? If so, what happened? Not a doctor/nurse, but my ex-girlfriend delivered a baby while I was in the delivery room, and turns out it wasn't mine. She was 16, I was 15. All along I was under the impression that this kid was mine, and time to be an adult. Took all the classes, read the books, worked every night/weekend to save whatever money I could as a 15-year-old. I finally get the call she is in labor, so I have somebody rush me to the ER. Luckily for her, it wasn't a long labor, only about 6 hours, but there was a complication. The baby came out with the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. Doctor assured us it was going to be okay, but the nurses were prepping for things to go south. Baby comes out, it's a light shade of purple, and the nurses immediately take the baby and put on the smallest mask you have ever saw to help it get oxygen, I guess. I was too panicked to ask a lot of questions. They state they need to keep the baby on watch overnight, so I stay in the room with the ex. The next evening, baby is back in the room with us, and all seems well. The ex is asleep, and the same nurse from the night before comes into the room and beckons me out. She states that at risk of her losing her job, she has to break some harsh news to me. That kid is not mine. She stated that, while at this stage it wasn't obvious, over the next few weeks it would become clear this kid was mixed, and since both of us were white, it was a high probability that it wasn't mine. Cue a mixed bag of emotions, and me promptly waking the ex to get a little clarification. Come to find out, she knew the chances, and was just hoping it was mine, because it worked better for her. Apparently her father was old school racist and she didn't want to have to deal with that. I left the hospital to collect my thoughts, and a few weeks later was served with child support papers. One DNA test, and about 6 weeks later, I'm 0.0% that kid's father. Wherever that nurse is now, I hope your life is amazing. I understand that you were not supposed to get involved in the personal side of things, and keep it professional, but you saved me a lot of additional headache. Similar, but I don't know where else to put it, because it just makes me laugh. My aunt is a nurse in the maternity ward. She had a couple come in where they were both very black. Lady has baby, and it is white AF. Like, totally pale, no trace of any pigment. They put the baby on her mom, and the mom starts yelling about how this isn't her baby, and they still her baby. In all fairness, you can be very confused during/after delivery. It wasn't stupidity, just sobbing and freaking out, and the father is just sitting there, and looks very confused, because even he's realizing that, even if she did cheat, there is no way the baby would be that white. The doctor and nurses are trying to assure her that this is her baby, and the skin usually darkens later. Come to find out, when he called his mom, she pointed out that they have a second cousin who is albino and maybe baby got that gene. Turns out that's what happened. Baby was albino. My fiance's father is almost certainly not his biological dad. His mom was just a genuinely terrible human being who didn't even try to hide the fact she was cheating. But his dad loved him from the second he was born, and when the mom decided 4 years later she just didn't want the kid anymore, she just gave him to his dad and rode off. Jay's dad ended up getting married, and they tried 4 kids, before finding out his sperm count was too low to ever father children. They ended up adopting many years later. He sat my fiance down when my fiance was 13, and told him the truth and that, if Jay wanted to test they would, but it was up to him. Jay cried and told him he just wanted him to be his dad, and that was the end of that. Edit. I originally had put real dad instead of biological dad. Changed it when several people pointed out that the man who raised him is most certainly his real dad. I know a girl who was pregnant with her boyfriend's best friend's baby. He found out there was a possibility about a week before she gave birth. I went up to see her once he was born, and he looked just like the friend. There was no question. I broke the news to her boyfriend, and he was absolutely devastated. His parents were heartbroken and super. They had bought the girl everything she needed, including a $500 car seat/stroller set. She refused to give anything back. She started up a relationship with the friend immediately after having their child, and they are still together a decade later. But the kicker for me has always been that the boyfriend and best friend were next door neighbors. She moved into his house after coming home from the hospital. So her ex-boyfriend and his family had to see them basically every day raising this child that they had believed to be his for the entire pregnancy. I can't even imagine. Edit. Yes, they did a DNA test right after he was born. The baby was the friend's. I had a vasectomy. While chatting with the doctor, he told me about another patient. This guy had 3 kids and came in for the snip because he and his wife decided they were done having children. The doc opened up his sack and found nothing to snip. This guy was born without the ability to have any children. The poor doctor had to explain to him what happened. Imagine finding that out that way. I worked as a lab tech before I became a nurse. We had a set of twins in the NICU that were super early and the mom was still in the OR, getting sewed up from the cesarean. I was drawing baby B's blood when mom was wheeled over to baby A's isolette. She was crying and said, "Oh, thank God you're not black. I have been so worried the last 7 months." So newborn babies, especially when they're born early, are very pink, almost red. So even if a baby was part black, their skin isn't necessarily dark yet. But looking at these babies, it was obvious they were going to be black. The shape of the face, the texture of the hair, and baby B that I was working on had an intense Mongolian spot. A few weeks later, my NICU nurse friend told me that the babies were now on a no info status, meaning security alert, can't give anyone information about them, can't refer to them by name, etc. She said there was a huge fight because the mom's husband, white guy, obviously noticed that the babies were half black and that mom had cheated on him and got pregnant. The real dad, black guy, came in and didn't realize the mom was even married. Those poor babies. I had the opposite happen, sort of. My wife and I are both brown-skinned dark-haired half Mexicans, and our moms are both 100% white blondes with blue and green eyes. So we sort of knew it was a crapshoot with our baby, but the nurse who was assisting with delivery had no idea. At one point she gets sort of nervous and calls for help, and another I guess more senior nurse came in and nodded and came over to talk to me. I thought there was something wrong with the baby as she comes over and stumbles through some questions, so I was the father and no one else was coming, etc. Then finally she awkwardly asks if either of us happened to be blonde growing up. I said yeah I was, and both the baby's grandparents are blonde as they come, and this wave of relief went over her, and she brought me over to see this blonde as hell crowning baby head. It's funny because he looks just like me if you applied a gringo Instagram filter. We often get awkward questions about his heritage, and my wife always hits them with, "Yeah, we are not sure if he's mine." It's always funny to see people nod for a moment and then go, "Wait, what?" Had a college buddy whose fiancée was pregnant. They were the perfect couple, both had just over a year with great careers starting out. Everything was butterflies and rainbows. Fast forward to the delivery room, there in there and out comes a very black baby. He's quite the pale redhead, and she's a blonde/blue eyes Texas girl. He made sure everyone was okay, waited for her parents to arrive, and left without saying a word. He moved all his stuff out of the house while she was in the hospital and cut off all communications with her. Just walked out of their lives in the most stone cold act I'd ever seen. They were together for 9 years, and he just left cold turkey. She tried to contact him at his job a few times, but he quickly moved up the ladder and eventually got a job in another city. He told me once that he took solace in the fact that her family had already dropped about $10,000 in a wedding that never happened. Edited typo. I used to work with a guy whose wife was pregnant. Near time for delivery, everyone at our place of business had a big party with gifts, money, etc. So big day comes, water breaks, they get in car to go to hospital. She breaks the news on the way there it's not his, the kid is another race, and if he could just drop her off at the hospital and then leave, that would be great. He took a few days off work, found a new apartment, moved out, filed divorce etc. He called into work and told someone what happened. News spread pretty fast. All congratulations cards, etc. were cleaned up and thrown away. Everyone was very sensitive to his pain. Except, somehow, I don't know how, I did not get the news. So on his first day back, I walked into the office he shared with 6 to 7 other guys and said, hey, daddy-o, how's fatherhood so far? Getting any sleep? Got some pictures? Let's see the little tyke. He slowly lifted his head to look at me with a painful look. The room was dead silent. One of his workmates stood up, grabbed my arm, and walked me out of the room, shushing me. What happened? I asked. Did it die? What's the problem? When he told me I about died myself. I still feel bad for the dude, and it's been 30 years. Had a lesbian couple come in. One of them was pregnant, neither knew. Judging from all the screaming, this information was poorly received. Oh man, I'm so late to this thread. I used to work in the newborn nursery at a hospital. We got the babies right from delivery, cleaned them up, footprinted them, checked vitals, etc. Dads usually came in with the newborns. This dad comes in with this baby. Dad is white, mom is white, baby is very obviously not white. The dad was very quiet standing next to this baby, watching us clean it up. He says quietly, "I don't think this is my baby." You could tell he was absolutely devastated. We advised him not to sign the birth certificate until he was sure. Not sure what happened after we sent the baby back out to mom, but I felt awful for the guy. Random note from the side of academia. This is why they don't do blood tests compared to your parents in my college, Marshall University, to teach basic genetics. Too many were finding out they didn't have any chance of being their father's child. I only heard the horror stories secondhand, but the results spoke for themselves. Happened to my fiance's mom. His mom is a labor and delivery nurse. One time she had a patient whose parents were present during her stay at the hospital. The staff there have a whiteboard with some general information about the patients, like blood type, time spent in the wing, and like how far along. This information is nameless for HIPAA reasons and instead has a patient's number. So this patient happened to be the only one in the wing at the time. Her father was walking back from the cafeteria at one point and noticed the board. He stopped one of the nurses and asked if the blood type for the patient on the board was correct. He knew his daughter was the only patient there. It was B positive. The nurse confirmed it was correct. Turns out he knew his and his wife's blood type. He was O positive and his wife was A negative. This combination will never yield a B positive baby. He brings his wife out and just points at the board and this look of shock washes over her. Too long. Didn't read. Father, a patient in labor, finds out his wife cuckolded him 25 years later by knowing his blood type. Punnett squares. I'm a nurse, but this didn't happen to me. Friend of mine got pregnant in high school. She claimed it was our local doctor's son's kid, so he agreed to deliver his grandchild for free. Child delivered, and it was obviously half African American. Doctor's son and girl were both white. I think he still delivered it for free, as he was relieved his 14-year-old son wasn't a dad. Edit. Forgotten apostrophe. The doctor didn't impregnate a teenager. It was supposedly his son's kid. It wasn't. Labor and delivery nurse here. Black babies are usually a lot lighter at birth. Not everyone is aware of this, so I've had a few dramatic deliveries where the father looks at the baby and accuses the mom of cheating because the baby isn't as dark. Lots of drama happens on L&D. Edit. Adding a PSA or pamphlet about this subject wouldn't really help. A lot of people might be extremely offended that you assume the father of the baby would accuse their partner of cheating on them. If the father is accusing the mother of cheating right after the delivery of their child, then their relationship dynamic might not be the best to begin with. Edit 2. I don't mean the baby's weight, rather their skin color. Edit 3. Everyone that's upset about there not being a PSA or pamphlet on this, if you feel that strongly, then please feel free to contact your local hospital to set up education about this. Edit 4. Changed African American because, in true Reddit fashion, people got offended